Hi, welcome to the Sterling Heights Public Library. My name is Brent, and today we are going back to some classical French technique. So today we are making Bechemel. Now this is one of the classic French mother sauces. There are 5, and Bechemel is one of them. This is super simple and can be used in a lot of different ways. We're going to start out with some milk. Today I'm using whole. We're going to need some butter, some flour, and a little salt and pepper for seasoning. Our tools today are very simple. I'm going to need a spatula, a whisk, and a good-sized saucepan. So the foundation of several of the French sauces is a roux. Now that's R-O-U-X, and it's a mixture of butter and flour that are cooked together. And it's frequently measured by weight. The classical ratio is going to be 1-to-1 by weight. Most of the time, we measure things with a measuring cup. So I'm going to show you how to use a scale. So I'm going to go ahead and put the empty cup on there and turn the power on. And by doing this, this is going to zero it out. It's going to account for the weight of the cup. A lot of scales also have a 0 button. In that case, you can turn it on, put the cup on, and then zero it out. Either way usually works. So from there, I am going to spoon flour into it until I get to the desired weight. Now, a stick of butter weighs 4 ounces. So if I was doing the standard ratio, I would do 4 ounces of flour. I've personally always found that to be a little bit challenging to work with. So I'm going to do about 3 ounces, and that is going to be a little bit easier to work with. So the first thing, we got about a 3-quart saucepan here, and I am going to melt one stick of butter over about medium heat. Once the butter's melted, I'll go ahead and stir in the flour. We're going to cook the flour for a couple minutes. So we talked about measuring by weight, and that comes out to, with a cup, about 2/3 of a cup of flour. The exact ratio is not super important. What I find a little bit challenging about the 1-to-1 ratio is that it comes out a little on the stiff side. By using a little bit less flour, it's a little bit looser and it's a little easier for me to work with. So when that butter's melted, it's going to foam a little bit, and it's going to start to sizzle a little. And at that point, we go ahead and dump the flour in and just stir that together. And one thing you're going to find when you do this is that butter is mostly fat, but there is a little bit of actual water in there. And when you do that, it's going to kind of stiffen up a little bit. And as we cook this a little, it is going to cook some of the water out of there, and it is going to loosen up a little bit more once we do that. So we're going to cook this for probably about 2-3 minutes. And you're going to get a nice toasty, kind of nutty smell out of that butter and that flour together. It's going to cook the raw flavor out of the flour quite nicely. If you use flour without doing this, you'll get kind of a starchy taste out of it. So when it starts to look about like this, and you stir it, it looks a little bit clumpy like this, and then it kind of settles itself back down into flat. That's about right. You're going to be able to smell it too. Now, the moment that I start to add the liquid to this, it is going to start setting up fast. So I got about 4 cups of milk here, and I'm going to add a little bit at first and then stir in more slowly. Watch what happens. Yeah, see how that sets up just about immediately? We're going to stir that through, and then we'll add a little bit more and a little bit more. That stiffens up really fast. While we're at it, I am going to be adding a little bit of salt and pepper to the end of this, but I did use salted butter to start out with, so that does play a factor in the seasoning. A lot of people will debate salted versus unsalted butter. I don't think it makes that big a difference. You just need to control how much salt you're putting into things. As long as you're aware that you're working with salted butter, you use a little bit less at the end. At this point, we can really add pretty much the rest of the milk. And then we'll stir that through with the whisk, and it's going to thicken up quite nicely. Go ahead and take that little bit off of the spatula in there, too. You're likely to have some wadded up in the middle of the whisk, and that will loosen itself up as you stir it in. So this is just coming up to the slightest simmer right now, and you can see that as we've been whisking it here, and as it's starting to come up to that bubble, it has fully thickened, and it has become very smooth. And this right now has very simple, very clean flavors. It's basically just butter and milk and flour. So it tastes very much of dairy. I did just taste it a moment ago, and it needs a little bit of salt, but not a lot. I'm going to add a little of that. And add a few grinds of pepper. Now, classic bechamel often has a little bit of nutmeg in it. We don't use a lot of nutmeg in my house, so we're not going to fool with that. But okay, so that is about right. I'm going to turn the heat off. So what do you do with this? Well, a bechamel is, as I mentioned, a base sauce. You can use this as is, just as a cream sauce. It's a base for a lot of cream soups. You ever had chicken fried steak? That country gravy? Well, guess what? Basically bechamel. If you like Greek diner food, moussaka or pasticcio, this is a major component of that. That white stuff that's on there, that's bechamel. You can use this as a base for a chicken pot pie, casseroles, the base for a cheese sauce, mac and cheese. Very nice. So we are going to take this one step further. We're going to make a cheese sauce. Now, anytime I make a cheese sauce, I always put in a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of processed American cheese. Why? Because it melts really well and it helps smooth the sauce out. So we're going to go ahead and stir that in until it melts through. And then I've got a pound of, turn the heat on that down just a little bit, pound of shredded cheddar. I'm going to stir that in a little bit at a time and make sure that it's melted properly before I add more. This just doesn't take very long at all. Now, I am not using a real sharp cheddar here. This is a mild cheddar. Why? Because it melts better. Real sharp stuff has a tendency, it's aged and it's a little dry and crumbly, and it has a tendency to kind of curdle a sauce if you're not super careful. There are some things you can do to crank up that little bit of bite you get out of the sharp cheese without adding a whole lot of the sharp cheese. One of those things is adding a little bit of mustard or a little bit of hot sauce. And the last little bit. I'm going to go ahead and add probably about half a teaspoon of hot sauce. This is sriracha. You could use Tabasco. And I'm going to add about a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. Whatever mustard you like works pretty well, but something that's going to kind of just add a little bit of oomph to that. And as you stir it in, it's going to disappear, and the only thing you're going to notice is that it might get just a little bit more orangey colored. There we've got a nice cheese sauce. I bet you can think of a couple of things to do with that. Give that a taste. Oh yeah. We're going to use that to make some au gratin potatoes. So what do we do with that cheese sauce? Well, we are going to make some cheesy potatoes. So I have got 3 pounds of potatoes that I have peeled kind cut into bite-sized dice and parboiled. These are not fully cooked, but they've been boiling for about 10 minutes. I've got them drained. I'm going to add them into the sauce. Stir everything together. Ooh, that's going to be full. And then I'm going to put them in this 9x13 baking dish here, which I have taken the time to spray lightly with a little bit of cooking spray. So I've got that all stirred together, and I am going to lay those right in the pan here. Make sure that I get all of that sauce. Smooth it out a little bit. Going to top that with about 2 more cups of that shredded cheddar. I'll pop it into an oven, which is preheated to 350 until everything is bubbly and melty and a little brown on top and the potatoes are tender. I'm going to guess probably about half hour to 45 minutes. So 45 minutes later, it's out of the oven, it's bubbly, it's brown, nice cheesy potatoes. Now, if you were to take a box of cooked macaroni, say elbow macaroni, and use that instead of the parboiled potatoes, you got mac and cheese. You want a true au gratin, you sprinkle some buttered breadcrumbs on this before you put it in the oven. They come out nice and crusty and crisp on the top. So, bechamel, and one of the things you could do with it. Give it a try.